Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. For those of you who like these type of videos, please remember to click like down below. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and click the little notification bell, ring my bell baby. But on to the point. AlphaDestiny made a video that I actually happen to agree with, and I'm not saying I agree with everything in the video, but his main point is correct. I'm going to agree with it. He actually got this one right. And I'm the sort of person who gives credit where credit is due. Yes, there are beefs between he and I. There are disagreements between he and I. Biggest one being the fact that he won't squat or deadlift, right? That's usually pretty high on my list, and we're not going to get into all the fake lift stuff. That's water under the bridge. It's already been discussed. Everyone knows there were fake lifts done. But let's get over to what he got dead on accurate, because he is flat right on this one. He said that the best thing that he ever did for his back, and let's talk about what we mean by back. We mean the lats themselves, because your back is comprised of a lot more than just the lats. But people who want the big wide V taper, the pull-up is king. Pull-up is absolutely king, and I don't think we can disagree with that. There's a reason I put a strength standard there for that. And he has said, treat it like a competition lift, and he does take it up to 1 rep maxes. And a lot of people say, well, that's ridiculous. Why a 1 rep max? Well, I set a strength standard for that. I have a big 5 strength standard out there, right? And when people say stuff like, oh, I'm doing 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5, no, you're not. It's a pass-fail. I have a big 5 strength standard. I don't have 5 strength standards. I have a big 5 strength standard. And one of them happens to be the ability to do a 100-pound weighted pull-up or weighted chin-up. And that's its own topic as to what that standard represents and everything else, but it has to do with being overall jacked top to bottom, right, for someone who is drug-free, right? And I have a strength standard in there for the weighted pull-up or the weighted chin-up. They're interchangeable there. It's a 1 rep max. It's a 1 rep max ability. Do you have the ability to do it for 1? He treats it as a competition lift in the same regard. And I actually think that's the right approach to this exercise, because at the end of the day, it is strength, it is tension that matters the most. There is a correlation, an enormous correlation between your ability to produce maximum force and the thickness of the muscles involved. And he pointed out that he doesn't know anyone who doesn't have a massive back who can do elite strength standards on a pull-up. And that's true. Now, he kind of made a big deal about calisthenics athletes. That's where I'll break away and say I don't get it. I don't even know what a calisthenics athlete is. When someone says something like that, what pops in my head is a guy who doesn't squat, a guy who doesn't train legs. That's the only thing that pops in my head. I'm not really even sure what that is. Like, I wasn't aware that was an actual sport. But to me, that's usually what comes to my head, people who don't train their legs probably. But I digress over to the point. Weighted pull-ups, they're phenomenal. They're phenomenal for lat development. And that's the reason why when people bring this up, if I have a strength standard, a big 5 standard, and the only back exercises in there are the deadlift and the pull-up. Because if a person is looking for top to bottom development, those lifts in combination will actually tell you everything you need to know about their overall size. And generally speaking, someone who can do both a 100-pound weighted pull-up and a 500-pound deadlift is going to have a jacked back. If you can do both. They emphasize different parts of the back, right? They do emphasize different parts of the back. Is it to say that the pull-up is going to give you all-around back development? No, not necessarily the case. Rows are actually better for your traps. Rows are actually better for your rear delts. Deadlifts are better for your traps, your erectors, everything else than pull-ups are. But if you are looking to just put as much meat as possible on your lats, getting really, really strong at the weighted pull-up, and I mean a full range of motion weighted pull-up, you go all the way down and all the way up, will work wonders for that. And it's something that you should focus on. And I think the point that he brought up was a lot of the fluff and pump work, or basically the cable work, everything else. And, if you were to come to me and ask me, what's going to build the most lats, as far as that back width, your actual lats, would it be rows or pull-ups? I'd still say pull-ups. And I think rows are indispensable. I think as a bench press accessory, rows are pretty much essential. Most of the top coaches agree with that. Rows work wonders for building your bench press as a bench press accessory. But it's because rows have the ability, when done correctly, to hit a lot of the upper back a lot more. Right? The mid trap, the rear delts, the rhomboids, all of those things. They're tremendous at that, and there's some carryover with the stabilization on the bench press. But in terms of, again, just your whole lat, which is what's going to give you that wide back, that V taper, which is important. If you really want to look big, particularly look big from behind, you have to have a wide back. The pull-up will do it better than anything else. It will do it better than all the cable work, all the fluff work. And as he pointed out, it will carry over into general athleticism. And I'm not saying finesse work doesn't have its place. I do all my tricep work and everything else. But if we're going to come around and let's talk about athleticism, it's an exercise moving your body through space. Use a large amount of your core, a lot of abdominal involvement. There's a lot of other stuff happening with it. And the other thing to look at is the situation with fatigue, and particularly with weighted pull-ups. And this might sound a little controversial, but what do we know about fatigue in general? We know that a lot of your fatigue is systemic. A lot of your fatigue has to do with axial loading. Has to do with axial loading of your spine. Weighted pull-ups and weighted chin-ups not only have no axial loading, they put it in traction. All right? Because you're hanging, and that's actually very different. And it's something people don't think about when you're thinking of these exercises. When you think about even a lat pull down or anything like that, you're technically putting weight on your spine, right? Because you're sitting on it. And that's not really significant because it's the same weight you have sitting anywhere else. But you don't have that happening. Whereas when you're hanging, you're putting your spine in traction. What happens when we start hanging weights from it? You start hanging weights around your waist when you're doing pull-ups. Well, now we have an exercise that works the back that puts traction on the spine. It is arguable, point of contention, that some experts feel that this helps with recovery. The mere act of actually putting your spine into traction in some cases can help with your recovery from your squatting and deadlifting and things like that. So in this case, this is an exercise that doesn't necessarily generate a lot of the same fatigue, and arguably, again, point of controversy, arguably may help with some of your restoration and recovery. So when you look at it from that perspective, it does make sense. It makes sense because not only does it hit the lats just as hard, if not harder than anything else out there, we know pull-ups and chin-ups and things hit your biceps just as hard, if not harder than any form of curl that's ever been studied. They work your abs. In fact, some of the EMG data on just body weight chin-ups alone shows that they're as effective as doing crunches for your abs. So if you're doing large volumes of that, you're working all these extra stabilizers. You're working your core. You're putting your spine into traction. Right? There's a lot of benefits to this. It's a phenomenal exercise, and it's one that we should have a strength standard on. If your goal is to get really jacked, particularly, I mean, mainly your upper body, obviously. Someone with just a jacked upper body is not really jacked, particularly in person. But it is a big part of the equation, and having a wide back is a big part of that. So I'm gonna tend to agree with him on this one. This is again a case of, you know what, he's absolutely right on this. I'm going to agree with him. Absolutely going to agree with him on this one, and I'm going to relay the same message because I've always relayed that. I've had a strength standard for a long time on weighted pull-ups and weighted chin-ups, and that is a 1 rep max strength standard, and I think people should generally work towards that. He's done the same thing, and let's be honest, it has worked. It has worked. He's built up a strong weighted pull-up, and he has lats. He has lats as a result of it. And I don't think we can argue against that. And you know what? He's not the exception to the rule. That is the norm. Almost every single person out there with a good weighted pull-up has big lats. They go hand in hand. It's just unavoidable. All right, guys. Well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.